Hi, I'm Becky Johnson with Sweetheart Quilt Design Company, and today we're going to do a remake on binding number 5. I had a gal say, you explained everything great, but your fabric was so dark I couldn't really see what you were doing. So I have lighter fabric now. Hopefully this will be easier for you to see. So with this one, we're going to sew the binding to the back and then bring it to the front with an accent color. So what we're going to do, we're going to start about in the middle. We'll leave a tail so that we have fabric to do the final seam with, and we're going to start stitching here. Then as we go in 1/8 of an inch. Usually I'll trim it 1/8 of an inch past the top, and these are trimmed right at the edge because I quilted them all at the same time and there was only 1 inch between the placemats, so I didn't have a choice. I didn't think about it before I quilted them. So anyway, we're going to come in 1/8 of an inch because we'll sew it at 1/4, and then we have 3/8 inch here, 1/8 of an inch to go around, and then 1/2 inch for the other side. And that way you have a full binding. It doesn't feel hollow or empty. Okay, then what we're going to do is put in a pin here at 3/8 of an inch so that we know where to stop. So we'll stop right there, needle down, and then I'll pull this left side toward me to turn it, and then we're going to back up and stitch so that we're just off the edge of the binding, but we're still in the quilt. So then I can put in a pin, and you want to put it in 1/8 of an inch because that's how we're sewing it on. And then you can take this pin and pull it up to the top like that. So it's 1/8 of an inch in here and 1/8 of an inch in here, and you have a nice little miter in there. And then we'll just start stitching again. So we'll go around there, and then when we get to this edge, I'll just stitch to about here so that we have plenty of room to do the final stitch. So I'll show you that when we get there. All right. I like to, when I first start stitching on a binding, because I know I'm going to have to fiddle with it at the end, I like to do just a quick back and forth stitch so that it doesn't pull out. All right, and we're going up here. Whoops. I got carried away. To where the needle is. And then we're going to back up. Just a touch too far, but I can get away with that with just moving over a little bit. I'll do the next corner better. Okay, and then we brought our pin in that we put in at 1/8 of an inch in, and we're going to just start stitching again. Oh, I forgot. I'm working with a bias binding, so that's why it's behaving differently. But just couldn't resist putting this plaid on the diagonal. You know how that goes. All right, let me get my pen in as I'm getting close here at 3/8. Come up here, stop needle down. I'm going to turn. And when you turn, you can always check it and make sure there's 1/8 of an inch on the other side of your presser foot. And you do want to use a walking foot when you stitch on a binding because you have 4 layers of fabric plus the batting. Now, I have a built-in walking foot. That's why it doesn't look so obvious. All right, so I pulled my pin in up to there, and away we go again. Okay, pin in at 3/8. Stop, needle down. Pull the left side toward us, so we turn, go back, 3 stitches, and then we're gonna lift up the presser foot. We'll get our pin in right here, 1/8 of an inch in. Pull the pin up to the top, to the edge of the binding. And after you do this for a while, you might be able to do it without the pins, but I have found that for people, for beginners on this, it's helpful to use the pins, 2 of them. All right, back up. And then again, I'm going to do a little back stitch just to make sure that while I'm fiddling around doing my final stitch, I'm not pulling anything out. Okay, then we want to do this. You may find you need to trim this, but somewhere around about 1 inch past the middle, and we're going to overlap these. So I'm going to get a piece of this binding. I used to do this with a ruler, and it was very awkward. So I thought, what the heck? The binding's the right width. We'll just use the binding to measure. So I'm going to put this on right at the edge of this piece and overlap this piece so that I can get a 2.5 inch thing. Now, what I've found is that I don't cut it right at the edge of the fabric here. I come in about 1/16 of an inch, and it seems to work out better. Otherwise, it's just a smidge too big. I don't know why, but this is fabric, so fabric has a mind of its own sometimes. All right, then what you want to do is pick up these 2 pieces. You kind of have to scooch the quilt together. Put them face together and then turn one of them a 1/4 turn. Okay? Doesn't matter which one, but turn one of them a 1/4 turn. And then we're going to pin where we're going to stitch. Now, this is a little easier with this plaid here, but this one you can see where you need to end up, but this one it's hidden on the bottom side. So I go ahead and put my pin in, and then I take a look to see if my pin's pointing to the corner, which I lucked out. Now you can test it, make sure you didn't twist it. And then we're going to stitch this. So if you feel more comfortable drawing a line, then draw a line. But generally, if you get set there and then you focus on the other end, you'll stitch pretty straight through it. All right. Once again, I'm going to just test it, make sure I didn't twist it, and then we'll go ahead and cut this out. And I like to do a little quick thumbnail press just to make sure the seam allowance stays to one side. And then we're just going to feed it back in. We're going to overlap our stitches here and overlap them here and sew it the rest of the way. And voila, your final seam looks like everything else. So you don't have a big bulge. If you just overlap things or tuck them in or whatever, you end up with a bump at the end. And this gives you a smooth ending that isn't noticeable. All right. Now, what we're going to do with the trim piece, so what I did here is I cut 7/8 inch wide and joined them with a diagonal seam. And I did on these diagonal seams, I went ahead and pressed them open because the bulk seems to make a big difference with this trim piece. Then I'm going to get my handy dandy binder clips out. And what we're going to do, we're going to start in the corner and we're going to lay this out. Now normally it would be 1/8 of an inch in, and you would be, the quilt top wood, you'd be laying this right along the quilt top. Since we don't have that, I'm just laying it 1/8 of an inch in. So I'm going to go ahead and put a clip up there. We're not going to start stitching up there because when we get around the other way, we have to tuck the final one in. So we're going to clip this. And you notice it's not looking perfectly straight, but as I go around and I take the clips out, then I make sure it's straight before I stitch it. Okay, when we get down to the bottom, we're just going to trim this off our 1/8 of an inch in. And then lay this way. So what I do for starters is I just overlap that and put a clip on that. I'm going to put one here too because it's wanting to get away from me. All right, and then I put a couple of clips down here. So I know where I'm headed. Okay, now with this, you can see that the overlap here is on this side. So on the front side, we want the overlap to be on this side. So I'll just open this up and I take this and push it as hard as I can in there. Not quite far enough. Until it comes where I've got a nice miter on that. Okay, I still didn't get it quite far enough. There, I think I got it better that time. Nope. All right, I'm going to just trim a little bit of this out of here so I have more room to manipulate. Just took a little piece of the corner off. Had a seam in the binding at the same spot. All right, so then what we'll do is, just like I said, we'll start in the middle of this section, and I'm going to stitch this close to the edge. So as I take my clips out, I make sure that this is laying straight. Now when I get down here to the corner, whoops, I got to get the clip out of there and then hold it with my finger. And I like to stitch just one stitch past the miter and come back. Just something I like to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch along that fold and stitch this down. Because that little open flap on the corner of your binding is the part that if you don't stitch it down, it gets the most wear and tear. So you don't want it wearing out. All right. And then we're set to go again. Now when I get all done, I'll put this in the other way and I'll stitch it down on the back side. And when we get around to this side, get these threads out of the way. We get around to this side, we'll, trim the tail of the accent, and then we'll stick it inside there. And the thick part is already at this side, so then we'll just have to bring this over, but with the accent in there. And that's how it works. So have fun with that.